I was born during the Great Depression in 1931, and I have an older sister that's in heaven, and an older brother that's in heaven, and a younger sister that has dementia, and she's living with her daughter now. And we lived I grew up in a town called Fellowship. It's not on the map. It's absorbed by either Maple Shade or Mount Laurel, I don't know which. But there is a street in Maple Shade named Fellowship Road. But anyway, when my dad only had 1 day a week work, but there was a farmer. It was out in the farmland. Would you believe that? It was out by the 295. That was farmland. A farmer gave milk and eggs, and they had a big garden, so we survived. And then when my older sister and brother got school age, it was a new settlement out there, and there was no schools, so they moved in town, Maple Shade. So I went to Maple Shade. The economy came back. He had a good job at the Navy Yard, and we were fine. So, but you would not believe the difference of how it is today and how it was when I grew up. When I grew up, it seemed like no sin, you know? It seemed like everybody was kind, everybody was helpful. At our little town, you heard of no crime, you didn't lock your doors, you didn't have a refrigerator, you had an ice box. You had a man that delivered a block of ice, and he'd come walk right in your house and take the other one out of the fridge and put the new one in and put that one in the sink. And if you wanted ice for something in the summer, you took an ice pick and chipped some out. And sometimes my job was to empty the drip tray. That was not fun, because if you let it go too long, which you didn't do once you did it once, you had to clean up the floor. But we didn't have air conditioning. We didn't have, what else didn't we have? We didn't have a heater. My brother and dad had to stoke a furnace in the basement, but we did have pipes going to all the rooms and register boxes. And if you turned on the hot water spigot, cold water came out unless you went down the basement and lit the hot water heater. Oh boy. So, and you had to remember to turn it off. If you were the one that lit it, you had to be the one that turned it off, because it could, I don't know what would happen, but we were told you turn it off if you turned it on. So if you ever wanted hot water, you had to light the hot water heater. And washing machines were the old wringer type, you know. And that was a mess too. And you had rinse tubs, and you had to rinse it, and you put it through a roller. And if it was sheets or towels, you had to be careful, or they jammed, and you had to release the thing and pull it through. It was a mess. And my mom washed every Monday, rain, shine, hail, sleet. She washed on Monday, because it was a big job, you know, and by then we were out of clothes. And they didn't have tissues. We had stacks of handkerchiefs to iron, and everything had to be ironed, no permanent press. And what we were taught early, to honor the iron, and us girls had to iron piles of handkerchiefs for 6 people, you know. So, but we were such a happy family. We loved each other. We got along. We all had jobs and loved it. So fast forward, okay, I was a bobby soxer, you know how you see it on TV, and the jitterbug, and I did all that. And I had the saddle shoes, bobby socks, poodle skirt, went to the dances. It was fun. But guess what? I wasn't saved. My family didn't talk about God. We didn't have a Bible. We didn't pray. We just didn't know the Lord. I believed in God. I don't know where I picked that up in my lifetime, but I believed there was a God, but I didn't know anything about him. I believed there was a heaven, and I falsely believed that if you did better things than you did bad things, you went to heaven, which is such a lie. Anyway, fast forward again. Well, I lived through the war, but we never got bombed. We had searchlights at night and blackouts, and my dad was a warden and all kinds of stuff. And there was rationing. You had sugar rationing, gas rationing,
and green stamps.
Green stamps, yeah. And we had what was called victory gardens. If you were a good patriot, which everybody was back then, you dug up half your yard and had a garden too. So, but anyway, fast forward, I'm happily married. I'm 27 now. I have a little boy 3 and a little boy 1. And my mother-in-law said to me, you know, kids do better in school if they go to Sunday school, and we have a Sunday school at our church. So I thought, great, I want the best for my kids. So my husband worked cycle strip, but he happened to be off that weekend, so I left the 1-year-old with him and took the 3-year-old. He loved it. He didn't even know I was there, you know, but I sat through it. And so that the lady said, are you coming back next week, you know? And I said, well, he only gets 1 weekend off a month to babysit, you know? But she said, oh, we have a nursery. So after Sunday school, she took me and showed, and the kids were playing with each other. So the next week, I took both of them. And they were both good. No cries or anything. So I'm sitting there, and she said, you know, we have church upstairs going on, because the Sunday schools were street level, but upstairs was the church. It was the Morristown Bible Church in Morristown, right across from Wawa. Wawa wasn't there then. Anyway, I heard for the first time the message of salvation. It happened to be Communion Sunday. And I was listening, you know, and he told about the love of God loved us so much that he sent his son and let his son die. And when his son had said, is there any other way? He said, no. So Jesus said, I'll do it. Well, I was just shocked. And then he said something that really hit me home. No sin allowed in heaven. No sin allowed in heaven. And I thought, wow, that blew my beliefs, you know. So I accepted him, the Lord as my Savior, right on the spot. And I couldn't wait to get home to tell my dad, because my dad had been searching our whole life. He tried everything. He went into Rosicrucianism. He stared into the mirror. We went to a spiritualist church where they tried to contact. He tried everything but churches. And when I told him, he got saved on the spot. We all bought Bibles. We all started going to church every time the doors were open. And I started studying the Bible. And no matter what I was doing, I studied the Bible. I was a Sunday school teacher, worked in Awana, taught everything, you know. And if you ever want to really learn scripture, become a teacher, because you have to study so that you know the whole story, okay? And then in 1979, Nancy was already married. My son Brian was already married. My son Brian had graduated at Trenton, was going back for his doctorate in biology. My other son was about to graduate, Bob Jones. And so my husband turned yellow. I mean, his skin, his eyeballs, he was one of those guys that never went to the doctors. So, of course, he was taken to the hospital. He had advanced stage of colon cancer. They did a colostomy, which was horrible. And I thought that they didn't tell me they didn't get it all. You know, we took care of that. He went and had chemo, and he was sick as a dog. He had to have it twice a week. 2 days a week he felt fine. The day before chemo each time. Anyway, by Memorial Day, he was back in the hospital in terrible pain. He had grown back, and there was no hope. They gave him a week to live, or 6 weeks. So he didn't want to die in the hospital, so I took him home, got a hospital bed in the living room, and that was the most horrible, horrible time of my life, seeing him in pain. The nurses taught me how to give a shot. He was on morphine, and anyway, he died August 5th of 1980. I was 49. I had a daughter, just graduated 8th grade, going into high school. And my son Bill, he had graduated Bob Jones, but he was taking a year off to earn some money, and because he was also going to get married the following year. So he was home. That was good. And the Lord saw to it that I had my life full, because I was the mother. He was a youth leader, and I was a mother to the group. And like, he would he'd get out like movies from the Burlington County Library, and he'd show them movies. They'd be old, they'd be black and white, but the kids loved it. And I'd make big barrels of popcorn, and so it kept me busy. And there was a couple kids that had been street kids that he reached, and they were at my house every night. So I had a full life. But I also knew I had to make a living. So I decided, I made a pretty good nurse, you know. I had nursed him, and I thought I always wanted to be a nurse. So I went to nursing school, aced it out, loved it. I thought I would always study, but I didn't. I studied the Bible instead. But anyway, I loved being a nurse. I really did love it. I worked on the heart floor at Zerberg Memorial in Riverside, which right now I think it's just a rehab place. But anyway, I worked on the heart floor, and it was also respiratory. And I think every teenager should have to go tour a hospital in the respiratory department, and they would never smoke. Those people begged for treatments, and you can only have them every 3 hours. They would like, please, Elaine, please get the respiratory up here. That's not part of my story. Okay, let me get moving. So my whole family, as my kids, they all got saved. We got baptized all together in the same baptismal. Me and Nancy and Brian. Sandy was too young, but the rest of them got baptized. We all got baptized together. I was always a teacher, always worked on, always did everything at church. I did too much at church. I did the baptismal gowns. I got the communion ready. I did the bulletin boards. I did everything. Plus I was working for the Saints Prison Ministry later. They're 35 years old now. And I've worked there for 35 years, on and off. No, on, but now I just do head the mailings. That's all I do now. But I used to mark lessons and all kinds of stuff, so I was up there all the time. Anyway, in the meantime, Steve died in 80, my dad died in 82, and he was my hero. In the meantime, for 4 years, my husband's sister and I had become best friends. And we did everything together, vacations, everything, ate together, yard sales, everything. And in 84, she died of a sudden heart attack, which is like, I feel sorry for anybody that has somebody die suddenly, because you're not prepared, you know. At least my husband, I knew he was going to die, and he was sick. And I was almost praying that the Lord would take him, you know, he was in such pain. But my sister-in-law was such a shock. And then my mother-in-law fell and had an operation, a failed operation. Her knee turned in like that. She walked on a walker for a while. I'd stop on my way home from work. I worked night shift. I'd get her bathed and fed breakfast. go home, sleep, go back to her house, make her dinner, and do anything that needed done. Back then I was strong and vibrant, you know. I'd mow her lawn, my lawn, I was doing it all, you know. But I didn't think of that. I had plenty of energy, I did it, you know. So, am I taking too long?
About 4 minutes more would be
Okay. Fast forward. Okay. I directed Bible school for 10 years. And then we changed pastors. We had a pastor like Pastor Brady. Good teacher, knows the word, you know, gives it to you, the whole thing, no holding back. And then he left, and we got, the last year I was there, we got a pastor from Delaware. They still had a home in Delaware. They were an older couple. And he didn't know the word at all. His sermons were so lukewarm, and I caught him in a couple lies, and I just couldn't stay there anymore. And Brian and Sherry were coming here to Bethel, and Nancy and Deke came to Bethel then too, didn't you?
We came after you.
You came after me? Anyway, then I've been at Bethel ever since. I think I came in 2001. So I've been here a lot of years. And I was determined I wasn't going to do anything when I got here. I was just worn out from what I did. So remember that. Don't get the same person to do everything. Let the other ones help. Anyway, but I did. I taught Sunday school. And I worked in Awana, and, you know. So anyway, but a group of ladies from I'm taking too long, I'm sorry, a group of ladies from our other church and some of my best friends got together every Monday night and got together and prayed and talked and ate and had prayer time and all. And I got to be very good friends with one of them. And we did everything together. Like I had the other Doris, her name was Doris. So if your name's Doris, don't get friendly with me. Anyway, we were buddies. We did everything together again. Trips, those bus trips, they were fun because they arranged everything. Anyway, didn't she get, what do you call that woman's cancer? Ovarian cancer, yeah. She got ovarian cancer, so I took her to chemo and everything, and they said she was cured. So, but they said she should keep up chemo, but she didn't. She was tired of having, she called it chemo brain. She didn't have clear thinking. So, of course, she died of colon cancer, of ovarian cancer. So I lost another best friend. So, and another one of the ladies died. Another of the ladies moved away, so that broke up that too. So, let me see. I had retired when I had to take in my mother-in-law, so I wasn't a nurse anymore. Of course, I was older too, and I decided after she died not to go back to it because it was too stressful, you know, too much to do. By then, nursing had changed. They changed it so you had more patients. They took away your nurses' aides. It was just not like it used to be. Like when I first started nursing, I really loved it. Anyway, so I didn't go back to nursing, and trying to think. I'm sorry. And so anyway, I'm here. I've read the New Testament, like you said, the reading. I've read it so many times, and I know the Old Testament from teaching all those lessons all those years, because being a teacher you have to study. But I didn't read much of the Old Testament. I couldn't stand how those Israelites kept, after the Lord did miracles, and you know, I just couldn't understand that. But then I realized they didn't have Bibles. We have Bibles, and we disobey the Lord. So how can I look down on the Israelites, you know? we have a copy of God's Word. We know better. So, my life verse, I have so many I love, but I picked Psalm 145, 1-3. I will extol thee, O God and King, and I will bless your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. It starts out with extol. I think extol is a name just for God. I can't think of anything on earth that I extol. So I think extol is a God word. And it ends with his ways are unsearchable. If I live to be 100, I'll never figure out God. Neither will any of you. He's too wonderful. He knows all, he knows what I think, what I'm going to think tomorrow. You know, he knows everything. So trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Acknowledge him, and he will direct your work.
Thank you.